Two. East Hampton Town Board, Montauk, we are live.
Beautiful. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the East Hampton Town Board work session for Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. Carol, if you could please read the roll call.
Councilmember Flight?
Present.
Councilmember Lease?
Present.
Councilmember Rogers?
Present.
Councilmember Calder-Piedmont?
Present.
Supervisor Burke Gonzalez?
Present. Now, if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So for today's work session, we start with the public portion and we ask folks to limit their comments to 3 minutes, please. And then we have 3 topics. The first is Amistad Week, and we're going to be hearing from the Executive Director of the Montauk Historical Society, Mia Sertic, the Executive Director of the Eastville Historical Society, Dr. Georgette Greer-Key, and the Founder and Executive Director of the South African American Museum, Brenda Simmons. Then we've got a presentation from our network communications specialist, Eddie Schnell, for an emergency communications update. And that'll be followed by a presentation from Samantha Klein, our intergovernmental government relations coordinator on NYSERDA Clean Energy Communities. That'll be followed by liaison reports and then resolutions. But before we go to public comment, I believe Kate wanted to make some remarks.
Yes, I just wanted to remember the service to Town of East Hampton of Phil Gamble of Amagansett. East Hampton lost one of its most original and finest last week when Phil Gamble passed away. Phil was a father, a businessman. He served on the Zoning Board of Appeals for East Hampton for 30 years, 20 some odd of them as chair. And he was a member of the the Amagansett Fire Department. When I was appointed to the Zoning Board back in 2003, Phil was the chair. And I learned so much from Phil. He was generous with his mentoring. He was fair and balanced as a chair, and he never, ever lost his sense of humor. We used to keep a book of Philisms, as he would describe having to take down part of a heart-shaped swimming pool that someone had built on their neighbor's property as "we hate to break your heart," which is just one of how Phil felt about our community. He was dedicated to our community, and I just want to acknowledge that we all will miss folks like Phil who spend their lifetime giving back as they live their lives here in our community. And the name of Phil's boat was the Big Gamble, so I hope Phil is out on the Big Gamble catching some good fish. Thank you, Phil, for all you've done.
Appreciate it.
Yes, that's beautiful, Kate. Okay, so Carol, I don't know if we had a time for a sign-up sheet. So is there anybody here that would like to address the board? Jason, is there anyone on the line?
Yes, we have one caller. Hello, caller ending 0299. You are on the air.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, Town Board. This is Carolyn Logan Gluck calling, and I'd like to address a concern that has been aired in Wainscott, but maybe has more broad bearings on the entire town. And I'd like to clarify this morning, I'm speaking on my own behalf. I'd like you as a town board to consider requesting and or maybe even requiring the Architectural Review Board, which in and of itself is a town board appointed board, to hold public hearings in connection with applications that come before it because of their being within or adjacent to an agricultural overlay district. Last December, the ARB indicated its intention to hold public hearings, but has yet to follow through. Why is this problematic? There is no trigger to alert immediate neighbors and the surrounding community about applications that may have a significant and maybe even detrimental impact to community character. Time and again, the ARB has tried to curb the mass and scale of new residential construction on properties abutting farmland, and in my view, failed to do so adequately. The ARB has indicated it is interested in hearing from the public but there is no means by which the public can be made aware of what's coming down the pike unless they take it upon themselves to review every ARB agenda once it's posted. The Wayne-Scott CAC makes every attempt to make up for this gap, but as you well know, this is not the function of that committee. I urge you to consider requesting and perhaps even requiring that the ARB hold public hearings as do the other town board appointed board. Thank you so much for your attention. The ARB hold public hearings as do the other.
Okay, and we have one more caller on the line.
Okay, please put them through.
Hello, caller ending 8764. You're on the air.
Good morning, Town Board. This is David Buda. First, and this is really for LTV, I would like you to know that there is currently a 4-minute delay between real time and the time being displayed on the YouTube channel. As a result, I just barely almost missed an opportunity to submit my comments.
Hey, David, that's on your end. I'll reset the timer right now, but I just want to let you know that's on your end. I'm checking the YouTube right now as we speak, and there's not. So that's a user error.
If you say so, but
no, I'm not saying so. It's legitimately how that works.
well, then it really makes it hard for someone to follow along and participate if there could be a 4-minute delay between.
Did you pause it?
And the time to speak.
Did you pause it? Can you refresh it?
Let me. No, not recently. Let me make my.
Not recently. So was it be 4 minutes? Okay, cool. All right, here you go. And starting the clock in 3, 2. Here you go.
Good morning. Thank you for scheduling for this work session the topic of an update concerning the emergency communication system, which I had requested when I spoke on August the 1st. And there has not been any information provided to the public at large since the November appearance of Mr. Schnell. Having reviewed the posted PowerPoint presentation, for which, again, I thank you for the process of doing so, I have several questions I hope Mr. Schnell will answer in his remarks. There is not a single dollar figure included in the update presentation. So I have to wonder, what will it cost to add yet another town emergency communication site in either Greenport or Shelter Island to complete the hoped-for point-to-point microwave backhaul redundancy network, sometimes described as a ring within a ring. What functions or capabilities would we be giving up upon if the town were to decide not to add another tower site outside the limits of the town? As they say, when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. The original project is now complete, I understand, with a new microwave link being added from Pantago to Montauk, which required the extension of the height of the Pantago Tower. Equipment has been purchased for the 2 new emergency communication towers at Northwest Woods Brush Dump and the Springs Girl Scout site. However, they have not yet been mounted. Do we really, truly need another emergency communication site in either Greenport or Shelter Island? I have to wonder. Isn't the system already working well enough after those 2 empty towers, or won't the system already be working well enough after those 2 empty towers are populated with the equipment that was purchased last December for another $5 million or so? Next, in layman's terms, Mr. Schnell, what is the planned system upgrade from Motorola GGM site routes to Juniper SRX at all locations, and at what cost will that be? And lastly, again, a matter of technical jargon that I don't understand. Could you please explain what space diversity is, which is mentioned as something that may have to be determine the need for and finalizing the past designs and equipment specs, and that's on page 8 of your presentation. Thank you all very much, and on my screen It's showing 11:13 a.m.
Can you refresh
On my
it?
computer clock, it's showing 11:17. Okay.
David, can you refresh it?
Thank you. I will just refresh it, and whoop, you're right. Pop.
Yes, I know.
So it's a matter of needing to refresh it. How would one know that? Thank you so much.
Thank you, David. Jason, is there anyone else on the line?
There is nobody else on the line.
So we are going to move on to topics. So we're going to take things out of order. We're still waiting for some folks for the Amistad Week presentation. So you're up, Eddie. Emergency communications update.
So, good.
All right, we're in business.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So obviously we know why we're here, and some recent updates on the system. The Panago Tower extension is done. It took a lot longer than it should have, but it is completed. We're now 20 feet taller. So now the top of those whips extends to 199 feet, which is high as we're allowed to go without putting a light on it. But it did give us the center line we needed to reach Montauk. And that last link, which was the last large portion of the original project from 2017, was completed. So basically the original project, except for some punch list items, has been fully done. And Motorola is planning on finishing out the punch list this fall. We've had a new generator and propane tank installed from Wainscott, so that's no longer diesel, that's propane now. The UPSs, the big battery backups that power all the equipment until the generator comes on at Panago, which is Town Hall, and police headquarters, those batteries were replaced. That's every 4 years that's supposed to be done. We're replacing the generator at Panago and the propane tank. Right now we don't have enough on-site fuel storage to last a long enough time. And the generator is original from 2001, so it's just aged out. Our next software upgrade which is covered under the Motorola contract that we pay them every year for service, and they also upgrade us. That's happening in December. So there's a lot of things get replaced, like servers and switches and routers, and we'll cover more of that when we get to SRXs and GGMs. But the system did support both the President of the United States visit as well as the former President's visit to Bridgehampton. Both events had over 150 additional radios that we normally wouldn't see, banging on the system. So they handled it without a flinch. That's always
Only they could have handled the traffic, right?
So microwave backhaul, Shelter Island, which was included in the November proposal with the 2 sites to provide redundant backhaul for both the Gator site as well as for Blue Bay, which is where we had problems getting a redundant microwave path. And we identified Shelter Island as the best option. At the time, we believed Shelter Island owned the tower, and they thought they owned the tower and had exclusive rights to space on the tower. Turns out they sold it, and they don't. So instead of going into a lease agreement similar to Noyak and paying thousands and thousands a month, that is always an option, but taxpayer money we'd rather not pay. So we looked around again to see, is there another option? And the tower in Dreamport came available. It was originally written off years ago because we thought Cablevision owned it, but it turns out the Village of Greenport owns it. And apparently Cablevision owned a previous tower at that site and still has it registered to them. So from a radio perspective for the microwave paths, it is a viable site. The guy wires are not blocking it. That's always a problem with guide towers, is if there's metal in the way, it's not going to work. We did receive the last structural analysis, which was performed by Dish Wireless, and it's not exactly promising for us. We did send that to our engineers that we usually use for structural work, All Points Technology, and they took a look at it for us off the cuff, and they feel that it's probably capable with minor upgrades, mostly in the guy wires. So this tower has single leg guy wires, which means there's one wire coming up from the ground and it goes to the edge, sidebar of the tower. You can put on what's called torque arms. So from each of the 3 locations, it has 2 cables that come up, and that keeps the tower from shifting this way, which when it does that in the wind is no good for microwave at all. But it's fine for RF because it's going 360 degrees, but microwave is very directional. The dishes can't move more than a few degrees. So they think that will solve it. So we've hired All Points to perform a structural, get the original drawings, get the original geotechnical drawings, and give the tower hopefully a clean bill of health with whatever hopefully minor modifications need to be made. Because the path from Blue Bay to Greenport is a little bit longer than Shelter Island, and because it travels over more water than Shelter Island, they are worried about reflections from the water. The signals will actually bounce off the water and come back up, and they arrive at a different time and causes problems. So space diversity fixes that by having 2 dishes mounted so that you're receiving the same signal twice, and it has a way to cancel out the interfering signals. So that's space diversity. Instead of 1 dish, you have 2. Costs more money because you have more stuff. The path to Gator, just based on length, had to be space diversity already. So that's already factored into the price.
Say that one again.
The path to Gator from
Okay.
Shelter Island to Gator was already space diversity, and it stays the same at Greenport. So it's just the 1 extra
Got it.
pair of dishes that would be the increase. The Motorola equipment was delivered from staging. There's a picture of it sitting at our IWT, the Motorola service shop in Holbrook. The equipment comes cabled, programmed. It's ready to bolt to the floor. They take the plastic off, unfurl the cables, connect them where they're marked where they're supposed to go, and throw the power switch and it's running because they don't want to pay prevailing wage to do all that work. So they do it in Chicago. The microwave equipment for Panago to Northwest and Blue Bay is built and it is delivered at Town Hall. That came in various dates in July. So that's all ready to start construction. The shelters,
But what is the timing for that, Eddie? When do we think that it'll actually get installed?
That's this slide.
Sorry.
So the shelter construction drawings, we approved them at the end of June. The buildings are currently being built in Virginia, and they're expected to delivery end of October. We also completed the site construction drawings, and they should be pulling permits soon. So with the buildings being delivered around the end of October, they'll probably be here early October, late September to start putting foundations and pipe in the ground. And then once the building is in, they can do all the antenna work on the tower, bring the cables from the antennas into the building, and then connect it to all the equipment inside. So probably November-ish before it's able to be functional, pending some other items. So planned upgrade, the last upgrade we got 2 years ago, they were supposed to upgrade us from Motorola's GGM routers, and there's 2 at each site because they're redundant, to Juniper SRX. This is just a migration that Motorola is doing on all the systems across the country for support into the future. And this is all covered under the cost of the service contract. Motorola stopped making the GGM, so they're not going to support it after a few more years from now. So they're replacing everything with the new box, which is the Juniper SRX. They haven't been delivered yet. They're supposed to be delivered in July, and now they're just, say, delayed with no ETA. But Motorola is still promising they'll have them done in September and October, because if this isn't done at every other site, the new sites which shipped with SRX won't work at all because they're not compatible with each other. So we'll see when. That's kind of like the big unknown at this point, is when that stuff is going to ship and when Motorola is going to get the manpower to actually install it. But they're promising me before these 2 new sites are done that they'll be ready for them. So the next steps, we're going to start the construction of Northwest and Blue Bay, this fall. I'd hope to start in September, give the concrete a little more time to dry before we put a 80,000-pound building on it. But sometimes they're pouring the slab, 2 days before the building shows up. It depends on the Motorola's contractor's schedule. We're awaiting the results of the Greenport structural analysis. The PO just went out last week. So that I know they ordered all the original drawings, and we're trying to get scheduled for the climber to come to the tower. They're actually going to climb it and write down everything that's on the tower to make sure that the report is 100% accurate. If the site's feasible, we're going to have the Aviat engineers come out. They're going to redo the path analysis, and that'll finalize the equipment design. That's when we'll know when we need space diversity. And at that point, we need to have a discussion with the Village of Greenport about some type of paperwork, legalizing our use there, and something a little more than a handshake, although that's fine. And we'd have to do a secret and issue a change order to Motorola for the site changes. So we already paid for Shelter Island, so it's just the incremental really for whatever reinforcement of the tower we have to do, which until the structural's done, we don't know exactly what we have to do, and whatever the difference is for adding space diversity to the second link. And it's, because we've already paid for a link, it's not, too much more, but it's still probably a big number.
So, Eddie, could you just explain again for the public why we want to have this additional link, whether it was Shelter Island or now Greenport?
So what it is this site isn't a full RF site. It's not providing coverage to customers in that area. It's only providing the backhaul network, which makes everything work. And we try to have at every site a redundant path because each site doesn't work unless it talks to the core site at Town Hall, and microwave is how it communicates. So right now, the Gator site, it only has one connection, and it goes back to Montauk at the dump. So if that tower at Montauk at the dump dies, catches fire, UPS battery dies, anything dies, we lose both sites instead of just one. So by having a redundant connection out of, say, Gator, if something happens in Montauk, everything else keeps working. It's only a problem in Montauk. But in the same thing at Blue Bay, right now we have a connection from Panago to Northwest, and then from Northwest to Blue Bay. So if something happened at Northwest, we could lose Northwest and Blue Bay at the same time. But if we have that extra connection out to Gator, it can just route through Gator and stay on the air. That we try to have everything be redundant. That way, if one thing dies, there's also a chance that everything stays up. Like if we have a microwave specific problem on a link, the radio equipment could be perfectly fine. The power could be perfectly fine. It's just that one radio died. I could be losing two sites for, a $10,000 radio died. And you're really just waiting for time for me to get a notification, me to drop what I'm doing, go there, figure it out, go back, get spare parts if we have them, hopefully, and get it back on. But when you have redundancy, I get an email that, this died, but everything's still up. It's not a rush. And we can fix it and not be pulling my hair out trying to
So you
rush.
had just mentioned when the president and former president were in town, there were 150 additional users. This time of year, how many users would you anticipate?
Usually the low number is 300, middle of the night. Busy weekend, it gets closer to 4. And, they were out here, we were seeing 600. Because we had, state police, county police, parks police, everybody and their brother was out here.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions for Eddie?
I have no questions, it makes common sense to not have an emergency on your emergency communications.
Yeah.
That would be the last thing we would want for public safety.
Agreed. So for me, I don't think, I know we're using the word redundancy. I think the word is resiliency also that works into it. If Montauk goes down, we don't have the backup plan for it, it's an issue. The town board has been building resiliency into this actual communications program for a long time. The Gator site's a brand new site. The dump site is actually spec'd out for 300 feet of height if needed. And right now it's about 150 feet of height, I believe, or 180. But the base goes up to 300 because if the canopy changes, site changes, we don't have to restart and actually engineer or re-expense to the taxpayer, we can add on to there incrementally as needed. Right now, it's fine. Northwest, Camp Blue Bay, they're going to be brand new towers. So what the town has done has either invested, authorized these sites that are as best engineered as possible for this. So if we could add in the resiliency of adding that backhaul link to it, I think it's just very appropriate for our geographically challenged area right now, which can also interrupt as far as our storms, but also our response from outside agencies where we might have to depend on our own. This is our own system. We have to make sure it serves our own people too, in my humble opinion.
What contingencies are in place should the tower in Montauk go down, communications specifically within that hamlet?
I mean, if it depends on the failure with what's going to happen. There's a million things that can break, and each one of them is going to have a different outcome of what still works and what doesn't work. So it's like we have the main trunking system, and then every site also has the fire paging equipment. That fire paging equipment has a way to function without the connection back to the core. They can do it fully over RF. Whereas the trunking equipment is pretty well useless without the connection to the core. We've also been staging at most of these sites in nationwide interoperability frequency repeaters so that they sit there off most of the time. But if we needed them, we can turn that on by pressing buttons on a portable radio in the field and enable that repeater, and those channels are in every radio that is on the town system. It's like all the fire chiefs say, oh, we have all these channels we'll never use. And it's like, you hope you never use them because you don't want to, but they're there if you need them. And, that just means that there has to be power at the site.
Do we have that playbook written, or is that kind of just knowledge you have yourself?
It's all in my head.
It's on you. Okay. So.
And structural analysis of the towers prior to any addition to those towers is pretty much just common standard practice.
Yeah, we've gotten
not overloaded structurally.
Yeah, we've had a lot of problems with the cell phone people in the past, and we've kind of beat them up, and they're getting done correctly now.
Well, making sure they're compliant instead of beat them up, I think is a better word. But yes, I understand what you're saying, because they overload it and then they can put structural deficiencies into it. So by doing this either at the Shelter Island and also the Greenport locations, it's just common practice for the town to do, make sure we're making the wisest decision long term. And also this will assist those two municipalities into what's on their structure then too.
Yeah.
It's nice to have another municipality out here that wants to work well also with the township. So I thank you and Supervisor for doing that.
Anyone else?
No questions, but thank you, Eddie. I appreciate the update very much.
No problem.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Eddie.
Thank you, Eddie. All right, so we're going to ask next, again, out of order, we're going to have Samantha Klein come up and discuss NYSERDA's clean energy communities. Welcome, Sam.
Okay, great. So I'm here today to share some good news. The town's participation and progress in the Clean Energy Communities Program has led to the town qualifying for a $100,000 grant to use on pre-approved project categories approved by NYSERDA. So the purpose of me being here is to kind of talk about the town's progress in that program, what it looked like, and start a conversation on how we might want to use that funding. So the town has made certain renewable energy and energy efficiency goals, and the state has as well. So NYSERDA, they set up a program that outlines different sustainability actions for communities to follow on a pathway. And as you accomplish those tasks, you get certain points. And when you reach thresholds, you get opportunities to receive grants. So the town has completed a number of these actions, from tracking our building's energy uses through benchmarking, as well as adopting policies on having our vehicles transition to be battery electric or hybrid rather than diesel and gas. Our participation in the Climate Smart Communities program, which is kind of a partner program to this that outlines coastal resiliency actions, community engagement, public action. Energy code enforcement training. So the town is in the process of doing a stretch code update with our HERS ratings, and staff from the building department as well as code enforcement. They've gone to trainings to be up to speed on everything. And then most recently, we've submitted this year for 3 different actions that have led to us reaching this next threshold of having a 3-star status and eligibility for this $100,000 grant. So one of them falls under buildings and facilities with renewable energy. So that was the solar installation that was completed on the Parks Department building. So that was a project that got the town a lot of notice, being that it was the first solar and battery storage on a municipal building in Long Island. Another big capital project that the town did was conversion of our town-owned streetlights to LEDs. So this was a project to lower our energy consumption with lights and improve efficiency as well as the longevity of those lights. And then in the transportation category, with that policy of anytime we're purchasing a new vehicle, first you want to look at, is there an all-electric option, then hybrid, then move to gas and diesel. So this year, the town purchased 2 electric pickup trucks for our Parks Department and our Aquaculture Department facilities.
If I could just add to transportation, I know we've also, we've incorporated 2 new EV vans also. They have arrived also in our posing grounds just recently in the last week or weeks then too. So that'd be up to 4 now. And those ones get used constantly on a daily basis for the town's custodial use. So they're putting on dozens of miles a day, each one then too. They're up both EV.
Yeah.
And that's in addition to our already existing electric fleet that we've been transitioning in natural resources planning department, et cetera, and town vehicles. And also, I believe we're just about to upgrade the charging stations as well.
Yes.
Across town hall property for these vehicles and for public use as well.
Yeah, and the charging stations, that's going to actually help us a lot in the Clean Energy Communities program too. So that's going to earn us a large chunk of points, being that it's such a large scale project. It's 20 ports, which is significant. Mm-hmm. So a couple more details on the grant. It's a no match grant, so we don't have any local cost share. It's just the $100,000.
You call that free money?
That's great.
It's like, okay.
That's wonderful. That's 200,000.
Yeah. So we have to submit the application of the project before October 23rd. And then another contingency is that they want the money to be used sooner than later. So the project is supposed to commence within 3 months of the grant award and be completed within 3 years. And so this is a list of the types of pre-approved projects that we're able to use it on. It's a pretty large variety of projects. So like we were just saying, charging stations, that is something that this grant could also be used for if we want to look at other locations for them. It can be level 2 chargers or fast chargers with this $100,000 grant. Other grants do have restrictions on which one you're able to use it for, but this one doesn't. Electric vehicles, so any vehicles can fall under this. They just have to be all electric. Solar projects, if the town was interested in owning solar. So the Parks Department one that we talked about earlier, that was through a power purchase agreement where the town is the owner of the property, but another company is the actual owner of the solar, which is a unique setup. So that way the town doesn't have to do a big upfront cost. Another company does that, but we're still hosting the renewable energy. But in this case, if we wanted to own, we can go about it with this grant. Or the building energy studies. So the town is currently on the cusp of completing clean energy studies for 3 of our buildings. So they're very similar to energy audits where they outline improvements for energy efficiency. So that's another use that if something specifically outlined in that audit as a recommendation, this can fund that. And then
Do we expect the recommendations to be back, Sam?
So Kim Shaw is working on that, but I think the studies are pretty much finalized. I just don't think that they're in a report yet that's circulating. And then heat pumps, so any current fossil fuel heating system, if it's going to get upgraded to air source or geothermal, that's another use. And then electric landscaping equipment, so electric leaf blowers, chainsaws, or riding and push mowers, anything that would be electric there. I talked to the Parks Department about that, and because of just the amount of properties that they're maintaining, they do go through a lot of equipment. So that could be another good use here. And then I just wanted to mention too, so these are the different star systems. So we're in the 3rd star designation right now. And if we get an additional 1,300 points, then that'll bump us up to another category. So the charging stations, I think that gets us 1,000 points or 1,200 points. So right there, we're getting very close. Doing something like the landscaping equipment, that's a smaller scale. So I think that one's only 200 points. But all those ones we just mentioned, the HVAC upgrades, those are all different ways that we can increase our score. So ideally, the more that we're doing, the more money that's coming in, and we're just spending it, right back into kind of the program's initiatives and purposes. Yep. So that's all I have. Maybe it would be more helpful for me to stay on this slide though, but.
Good question. Just in terms of kind of what gets the points, is there a way for us to see, what projects have specific points? You obviously talked about the HVAC one, but for other projects for us to pursue, obviously you'd want to prioritize them as much as possible to kind of get the maximum points to get to that next level.
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Maybe I'll take this slide and then just write next to it the points. Yeah, that
right.
Definitely.
Yeah, I just, I'm going to say that, being able to get these designations it not only fortifies our commitment to the transition to renewable energy, which benefits the community in so many ways, but also brings us funding, which we always need help with to be able to do these projects without impacting our taxpayers. So that's why these designations are so important, and we work to increase them yearly.
Something you and I previously discussed when we talked about generator options, was this falling under that grant as well, or was that a different grant?
That was a different grant. Yeah, I don't think generators can go under this one specifically.
So,
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Thank you. So from buildings and grounds for the points, which I don't know how many as Tom mentioned, but I know there's new mowers and also the vans. Part of that also is electric EV vans and mowers cost more money. $100,000 sounds like a lot of money, but when it gets into investment of these, it doesn't necessarily go so far. Personally, what I would like to potentially see is if we try to spread it out the best we can so that the general public sees this grant back into the system, EV chargers at various town buildings that we could continue to add on to, and areas where individuals might be beneficial to see it instead of just expend it maybe on one heat pump or such, which we might want to capitalize anyway. Then too, it's state grant funding from the taxpayers of the state. I wouldn't mind putting it back into the taxpayers of East Hampton, but everyone can use. But, if we could talk more on that, and I know some of those things, if we have a deadline to make that decision, might work within that time frame. But
yeah,
I'm up for all options. But I think if we talk to Steve O'Brien and others, we might be able to get some more points before that deadline of 10/1 that might assist us getting there too.
Yeah, I would like, I agree with David as well, and I would like our decision-making being on, bang for the buck for the community need of where we most need this money, and also increasing our rating. But I think the need and where we get the most reduction of CO2 for the community are my two primary decision factors.
I assume that's how the point system works, right? It ties back to CO2 emissions for projects.
Yeah, I think they're trying to, whatever the largest impact. Mhm.
Yeah, I would also want to make sure that we're filling a need,
Yeah. Mhm.
not just going for points.
Is the grant competitive or is it automatic if you reach a certain the point threshold?
So it's competitive in the sense that there's a limited amount of grants. So we are getting in early enough that we receive this one.
Okay.
But yeah, as long as you do all the action items, submit the right documentation, you do get approved. Just as time goes on, the money pool that they have available might get eaten up. So right now it's almost like a first come, first serve basis. Mhm.
Well, as Kate said, I think obviously we want to focus on, making the biggest impact. That's important. But if we have additional points, it's $50,000 more that's available. So you're probably already doing this, but I would love to do an analysis of, what projects we might do that'll be important and impactful, but also get the points for the additional money to do even more goods.
Right.
So a couple of years ago, I believe, we hired Nelson and Pope to do pre-engineering studies for heat pumps for those buildings that we thought were going to be at the point where they were going to need a new system. So are you familiar with those studies that we
Yes.
did?
Yeah.
So I know we're putting a heat pump into the Montauk Playhouse.
Sanitation also.
And sanitation. Do you recall what's next up on that list of what other
There
buildings?
was a priority list that we, based on the age of the systems and the size of that. And I know we have that list, so we can get that for you. But I know there was
That's exactly what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah,
So-
Marine Museum would be
there was also Justice Court was on that list, and the study includes challenges and cost considerations. I know the airport terminal was another one on that list, the police department. So we do have that priority list and can provide it. And that
We
study.
should look at that too and see if there are some that are, more turnkey than others.
Right. Mhm.
And I guess the question to it is for in advance of the November 1st deadline for the next grant, do they have to be in process? Do they have to be out to contract, or what point? Because there's numerous ones that are in process that might be complete by then, or ones that might be out to an RFP for construction by then also. So do we get the point? When do we actually get, when are the points going to be
Right.
awarded for that?
I think it might be completion of the project. For the charging stations, though, let me double check on that one, because that one might be more of like a 50% completion, but I'll double check on that. I think heat pumps, though, are complete.
Since we're putting 20 level 2 chargers in at Town Hall, you said fast chargers are also?
Yes.
And this is one of the very few grants where fast chargers
Right.
are available. And that, of course, opens up our EV charging network,
Mhm.
which makes purchasing EVs more attractive.
Thank you.
good.
Yeah,
Great
this
job.
was great.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Sam.
Sam.
Yeah. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sam.
Okay.
That's the money finder. A very long title for Find Funds. Sam finds funds.
And I know you weren't here last week, but since I do have you, I thank you very much for working on that grant for the South End Cemetery with the town. the
Yeah,
town
yeah.
board.
No, it was.
You put a lot of hard
excellent
work
fun.
into it. You weren't here when I said it in my liaison report, but if I have a chance to say it again, I thank you for working with me for that too.
Oh,
personally.
no, I really appreciated being included on the project. I never knew so much history about the town that I've been living in for quite some time. And so it was great to be a part of that and reading the letters of support. I think we got close to 20 of them at the end of it from a variety of elected officials and families that have loved ones buried in the cemetery. And so reading their letters and learning about the people that were there, it was a great project and opportunity. So I hope we get the funding for it. So
Great. You did very well.
Remind us how much we asked for?
658,000.
yeah, it was close to the maximum that you're able to ask for. So we'll be able to do a lot of good with that money if we do get it.
And if I may, rather than in my liaison report, if I may jump in on that, New York State, Sam worked diligently and was a very important part of us receiving the $600,000 grant where we'll study a plan for Montauk coastal resiliency post-FIMP, moving into the future, including looking at at zoning codes and managed relocation. That grant is still in the process of being developed, the paperwork for the grant. I naively thought it would take about a month. So I've been expecting something to come in the mail since January, but the state contacted us and said we'll be receiving that grant contract in late fall, but it is for $600,000. It was the largest grant given out on Long Island, and Sam was a huge part of us working out the process. So I want to acknowledge you for that as well.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. Exciting work to come. So yeah, and it's great our community partners that are a part of all these projects. It's really excellent to just work with everyone. So thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Okay, so our last topic now, we're going to talk about Amistad Week, and we welcome Mia Sertic, Dr. Georgette Greer-Key, and Brenda Simmons. So ladies, if you'd like to come up to the podium. Patrick, if you wanted to pull up the PowerPoint that they've put together. This trio is a powerhouse. We're excited that you could be here today.
Thank you. While he's pulling that up.
You want to just come up to the microphone, Georgette?
While he's pulling that up, many of you who don't know me, my name is Georgette Greer-Key, and I'm the Executive Director of Eastville Community Historical Society in Sag Harbor. And I forgot my other glasses. These are medicine, so don't think I'm trying to be cool, because I'm not. So these are just what I have on today. I'd just like to say, first of all, it is so nice to be here with you all today, and thank you so much. And I was saying, sitting in the audience, like, this may be biased, but so what? I am biased. This is one of the best town boards ever, and we have been so grateful to been working with you for over the years, including our building where we are, and just seeing government at its finest. So I'm really excited to be here, but I also wanted to give you your accolades because you deserve them. You do a great job, and it's nice to be in an environment where not everybody is bumping heads. And so the work that you're doing here is so amazing, and I'm just happy to be able to know all of you. I know 3 of you. I see 2 members that I haven't worked with over the years, so hopefully I get to work with you too equally. It would be important for Eastville as we move forward in our new project as well.
Thank you, Georgette.
Hi, I'm Mia Chair-Teach. I'm the Executive Director of the Montauk Historical Society, and these co-conspirators of mine and I have been working together for the past couple of years on the subject of Amistad and its connection to Montauk and the East End, which is a connection that a lot of people don't know about. This began when Georgette invited me to Eastville to do a little talk about Amistad, which encouraged me to do a lot of extra research on the subject, and we learned a lot. I think all of us learned a lot about the important, significant role that Montauk played. And this eventually led to our working together to secure a Pomeroy grant for a New York State historic sign, which we dedicated last year. And that led, it was such an amazing event that we decided to work together again to do something possibly on an annual basis, but certainly this year. And I am now going to introduce Brenda, who can continue.
I just want to say thank you for inviting us. My name is Brenda Simmons. I am the founder and executive director of the Southampton African American Museum. And all I'm going to say is it's exciting to work with these ladies. And I look forward to letting you see the film. And stay tuned and hope you definitely come to our event.
So this map represents the tortuous path that the Amistad Africans eventually took to land in Montauk. And it began with a kidnapping in what is now Sierra Leone. And they crossed the Middle Passage to Cuba. This was at a time when the slave trade was illegal. And when they were in Cuba, they were given false identities to suggest that they had been born in a Spanish territory, which made it possible for them to be sold. And they were sold to sugar plantation owners who were put them on the Amistad, lovely, actually very beautiful schooner. It was not a Middle Passage slave ship. It was a fast schooner. And they were put on that for a 4-day trip to a sugar plantation on the other part of the island of Cuba. But they rebelled in a spectacular, successful rebellion using their wits and their resiliency, and with the help of 4 children who were also on board as enslaved children, who led them to where the machetes were kept. And so they staged this uprising and spared the lives of the 2 enslavers who promised to take them back to Africa. But they actually sailed them up the coast and ended up here in Montauk. So that's what that represents. This is a contemporary picture of the Amistad at Culloden Point, which is where we actually dedicated the monument. And that's Culloden Point today. It hasn't really changed very much. And we are very excited that our first welcome to the Amistad schooner, when it comes into Montauk, will be here at Culloden Point. The entire Amistad week is built around our having secured the Amistad Freedom schooner, which is a full-scale replica of the Amistad, to come to Montauk for a week of activities and to build on what we did last year. And I'm just going to show you some, and Georgette and Brenda can speak to what led to this last year in our dedication.
Well, I just wanted to say, for the last 2 images, starkly different, right? And I think what's important to us is that place-based recognition, that it happened here and it happened at this point, but also to give a little bit more understanding of who the people were. When we say Amistad, we kind of have like a generalized idea already because we've heard about it, we've read about it. Some people, because people still come and say they never heard, they never knew. And so this is really important for us to be place-based, but also to be a celebration and a commemoration of lives that were taken, lives that were lost throughout the total slavery in this country. And this picture is a picture of Brenda and I doing a celebration called the Ring Shout. It is historically the actual combination of African heritage, but also the American heritage that we call African American history and rituals here that are religious. So, and again, it's commemorating this space. When you think of something of slavery, or even when you see that ship, look at that wonderful beach and coastline. That's not the image that people get. So it's really important for us to have people understand where it was actually situated. And I know Brenda will talk about this. It was such, many of you were there last year, and it was such an experience of element, enlightenment that we all experienced together. And so it's really important for us to tell the whole story. Yes, there are some horrific images that you see, but also there is some triumph. And this is one of the one successful rebellions in the Northeast. If you look at the rebellions across the nation, there weren't that many that we can document here in the Northeast. And so this is really important for us to be able to document it here. Okay. And so this is a dance troupe that we had come up from the island. They will be joining us again this year. And it was so powerful because these young men were seniors going to college like in the next couple of days, and they didn't really get the magnitude of where they were. And if you experienced what they experienced on the beach themselves as young men, it left a mark on their lives. And so it's always that dance of good and bad. And so when we look at this dance in this picture here, it was so powerful to experience that fight of good and bad and eventually overcoming our struggles. And I think if the longer we talk about this saying that people try to avoid, no, we can heal. And this is a part of that healing about this story of slavery that happened here. So the healing, the real conversation, the implications that, and the legacy of slavery that we still live here with today is important for us to continue to commemorate how we move forward. Oh, this was a joyous occasion. As you can see, everybody was clapping, and a long time coming. We do have at the lighthouse a monument in the rock, but that's not the actual spot where it ran aground. It's here. And so we wanted to make sure that people know when they come on this spot that there was something important that happened here. And I don't know what the next picture is, Mia, but if it's not what I intended, okay, so if you were here, how many people were here last year? Did you come to this? Okay, so then you can witness what happened at the end. We were in a massive circle. I don't even know how many people were there. And we started to sing Amazing Grace. Even the history of that song, Amazing Grace, if you don't know the history, look it up, because it's a powerful history about an enslaver who was on a ship and had a different turn of ideas, and he wrote this. But it was so powerful to be holding hands with somebody you probably knew or you didn't even know. I mean, it was multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multicultural, but we came together to commemorate that moment and sing together about how we are more alike than we are different. And as long as we continue to have those conversations, that's what the beloved society is, and that's what we hope to continue to have as our future as we move forward for our young people, so they know the history, they understand the history, and they're able to talk about it, because it's not going to be enough with it's just us who know this history. We want to take examples from this history, lessons of it's okay to be different, but that doesn't mean that we can't get along. I may not agree with you, but I still love you anyway, right? And so those lessons that we want to take from their lives of triumph, of having somebody, a total stranger that you didn't know, help you, as happened in the history with Amistad. I don't have to know you to be human to you. And so looking at stories and understanding humanity for one another is what we need right now in this moment in our history. Brenda's acting shy today. Say something, Brenda. Come on. You don't got a poem or something?
I am a poet, but I didn't bring a poem today. But I want to say that it was really, really an amazing experience, and I can't say enough for working with these wonderful co-conspirators. And I will say this, the experience I had on the beach was something I will never forget. I started to dance, and I must have connected with my ancestors, to be really honest with you, because I felt like even when I talk about it now, I feel something coming on. But anyway, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, and it's something that I'm so happy that you all were able to experience that as well. And I look forward to everyone coming on the 22nd to the 29th, and they're going to tell you the details.
I want to add something about the dance and about the site. We wanted, obviously, last year to do our dedication at the site of where the Amistad had pulled up, and they were actually desperately looking for water and food, and that's why they dropped anchor and came ashore. And I think there was definitely a sense in the air that was very, very powerful. Absolutely. And this year, when we found, we made our arrangements with Discovering Amistad, which is the organization that runs the Amistad and runs the programming for the Amistad. Initially, they could just come to a dock and be moored at a dock. And because Georgette and Brenda so wisely felt so strongly about the importance of that place from having had that experience last year, that we managed to convince the captain of the Amistad to anchor the boat at Culloden Point on the 22nd. So that's going to be our opening event, our welcome event. The ship is going to be there as it was in the original painting, and we will have a similar, and I'm sure similarly powerful presentation there.
And I think too, one of the experiences that we had, which it was it was different. But what I will say is walking down to the beach and going through that pathway of the terrain and the tree, I said, oh my God, and you hear the African drumming. It was so life-changing and life-altering, not just for us, but for the many people who attended. And so the other thing that we are focusing on this year is actually having open houses through the 23rd all the way up to, and here's the schedule, to the 28th. And this is important because we've heard over the years that some teachers find it difficult to talk about slavery, and rightfully so, because it's a hard topic. But I will tell you, if you're scared of the youngsters, those youngsters get it. They can interpret it. They've done books, they've done movies on it. I know we worked with the Hayground School, and they were able to really do a great job with interpretation of slavery. But it's important for us to have the general public be able to come on the boat, do open tours. We have a family day. The family day is on the 25th, so we wanted to make sure that the youngsters have their time. And also, we're going to have Magro, who's an interpreter, a reenactor interpreter. She's going to be there to talk about it. And we also have David Leander, the state historian, that is coming down to be a part of the panel, but also to talk about the 250th anniversary. Because that's important too. When we think about the commemoration of the 250th, we also must not forget that there are unfinished revolutions that exist here in the region. And so we'll be focusing on that as well. We have a treat for you on the 22nd. I checked on the website the other day and it was like, there's only 5 slots left. So if I can get... No, probably not even 5 left now. So if you didn't get yours, you'll be able to see this. We'll be recording it. And we welcome you to come down any of these days because it is going to be magnificent. I will say we had a call with the Discover team, and they're just as excited as we are because nobody on this new team has ever been to Montauk. So we thank all of our partners in this. We have our sponsors on the flyer, but we also thank our sponsors in government and the docs and everybody who's making this possible because it takes a village. And that's what we are. We're a village that's want to push this project forward. So thank you for this time that you've given us and for your support over the years and your continued support, which we count on. Mia?
Thanks. I want to add my thanks to Georgette's, to you guys in the town, because it's the town dock on Star Island where the Amistad is going to be docked, to the fishermen who very kindly have lent us their spaces on that dock, and to East Hampton permits for helping us. So thank you. And I want to point out the flyer is going to be available. We'll be putting it in various places in town. I'm sure Georgette and Brenda will be sending it out. We'll send it out to our list. There's a QR code on it that links to a page dedicated that has all of the Amistad related activities going on. So thank you very much.
And we can certainly share that on our social media as well. And what I did want to say is I was talking to Joe Gaviola when we were out at Montauk Downs on Friday when the governor was here. And he said that the Historical Society has been trying for 20 years to get the Amistad schooner here. So it's a tribute to the three of you that you're making this happen this year.
Yeah, and we've had it in the region years in 2002, but it wasn't in Montauk. It was in Sag Harbor because at the time that's all we can do. So we're really so excited that now finally it is in Montauk. So we're really grateful, again, as Mia said, to the town for helping us and doing the things that you do for us. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions? Or?
I just have one. Me, I think you asked like a year ago a question you put out to me, like, what parts of history out here kind of do I consider worth protecting? And it's whose history? And often, like, those who don't have the power don't get to tell their history. And I think that's something that's changed in recent history, and the recognition of this site is so important. We had a discussion a few weeks ago about coastal erosion in that area, just further to the east. We've placed this marker here from New York State to recognize the Amistad, but that shoreline is under threat. From your perspective, is the physical place of where that site is something that you would like to see protected? Or is it something that you would see that nature takes its course? And, because to me, it needs to be protected. But I'm interested to hear your perspective on that, because I think it's one that perhaps we didn't fully take into consideration when we came up with that shoreline.
I personally think that's extremely important to protect. But there's so much history connected to Culloden Point, and it's not just the Amistad, it's also the Culloden, which sank there and gave it its name. Actually, it was scuttled by the British, but so I do think that entire coastline is important. I remember that beach when you could walk from Gosman's to Duryea's, and we've lost so much of it over the years. So we're really hoping that there's going to be a sand project upcoming, and I hope that that's going to help us. And Culloden Point particularly it's a very special place. And it really, I think we all felt, because when you're there, you really don't see any development. You feel as though you're back in the past, and it could be any point in Montauk history, including my childhood when I used to go down there. So.
Yeah, and I would just add too, one of the things that's important, like I said earlier, is place-based. And so much of place-based history for African Americans has been, lost. And you're not getting that back. And so for me, it's almost like the Mecca. When we touched down there, it was like, transport you to, it was really very powerful. But we just had a wonderful presentation on grants that are available to us. I serve many hats. I'm the vice president of the Preservation League of New York State. And so any support that we can lend, any grant applications, or just any fund to make sure that this place is always there. And we know we're an island. We know things are happening, but whatever we can do to protect that site, I think it's important, because many people have visited that site and they had no idea. And so now it takes on this other history, which are all tied together. They're all tied together. So the many histories there, absolutely, we want to see preserved and conserved any way that's possible.
Thank you. And thank you for all you're doing for recognizing this history. I think one of the great sadnesses is that slavery is still alive very much in the world today. It's something we had to continue to fight and push back on, because it's just immoral in every single way possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I look forward to Amistad Week.
Me too.
Okay, so now we are going to move on to liaison reports. Tom, if you want to start us off, please.
Thank you. We had a meeting last night with the Amagansett Citizens Advisory Committee. We reviewed the draft proposal feedback from the subcommittee that took place. The residents are very supportive of that meeting. They thought it was an excellent process, and that they found ways that they think actually they can safely save a lot of money with that proposed plan. That went back to our design associates who are present at the meeting, and that will then be coming to the town board in the near future for discussion.
I'm sorry, what was this?
This is the Amagansett lighting on the main street.
I apologize.
Yeah. Okay. Fire Marshal, I just want to talk to the Fire Marshal statistics year to date, just to kind of give evidence to the importance of us being fully staffed as a department. This is the first year in many years that we've managed to get that department up to the levels required. So just to give an example of what that means from public safety perspective. This year to date, we have done 866 commercial fire inspections. That is compared to 325 this time last year. We have done 1,152 public assembly inspections compared to 384 last year. There have been 356 notices of violation compared to 180 last year. 1,198 charges compared to 218 last year. I want to commend the Fire Marshal's office for the excellent work they are doing, and my colleagues for getting that department fully staffed. It's something that I would like to see in all the departments, because it just shows what we can do when we're at full strength. Additionally, I want to talk to sanitation department. We've kind of restarted this year's composting program under the amazing drive of Gloria Frazee. We are now doing pickups in Montauk. They take place at the community garden in Montauk on Saturdays. We started off with 3 full bins on our first week. This week it grew to 6 full bins that I brought up to the sanitation center. It's growing. It's something we need to be doing, and I encourage all residents to continue to partake in that. ADU, accessory dwelling implementation, we had a meeting this week of that committee. We will be bringing to the town board in the next month or so a review of different aspects of the existing town code for discussion with their recommendations. These pertain to lot size, the apartment size, ownership, septic funding, and other matters. Brooks Park Restoration, we met with the town attorney and that committee leadership along with their attorney to review the license proposal. There was largely broad agreement to some of the changes they wanted to see to that license. That will be those changes will be put in, sent back to that committee, and then we will be presenting those to the board for their approval as appropriate. We talked, David and I, briefly earlier today about the Marine Museum on Bluff Road in Amagansett. For those of you who hadn't had a chance to go there, from a historical perspective, it is an absolutely wonderful, wonderful location. Stacey Mars is one of the people leading that with those exhibitions. It is in need of some work. It's a very valuable town resource. I'm setting up a meeting with Steve O'Brien and James Pincott to look at what we can do in the near and longer term future from a capital and operational perspective. Excuse me one second. Just, I think that the only other thing we have an emergency preparedness meeting taking place on August 23rd. And that is everything from my liaison reports.
Great, thank you, Tom. David?
From Lieutenant Jeff Thompson from the East Hampton Town Lifeguards, the beaches over this past weekend saw the most significant surf of the season as the remnant of Hurricane Debbie peeled past Long Island, fortunately to the west, as it ended up being a very nice weekend. This coupled with the uptick in beach occupancy resulted in an uptick in rescues. Thus far, the town has done 222 rescues this season, 21 of them which were done just yesterday alone. And these are across both the Amagansett and the Montauk districts. Over the last 2 weeks, the district chiefs have reviewed spinal injury management and missing person recovery protocols with all ocean beaches. East Hampton Town Lifeguards also placed 5th in the United States Lifeguard Association's national competition in Texas, which was held this past week. Congratulations to them and all traveling that very far distance down to Texas for there. The Suffolk County Surf 1 examination was also conducted for 30 lifeguard candidates on the 12th of this past month. Congratulations to all those candidates that successfully passed or recertified then too. Through this week, the East Hampton Town beaches will be fully staffed, though we are starting to experience our first end of the season lifeguard drawdowns as the Southern College attendees begin returning to school, even one tomorrow. Anyway. Okay. Starting next week, wing lifeguard stands, which is the additional lifeguard stands to the east and west of the main lifeguard stands, will be drawn down at some of our ocean beaches. And then we will be looking to make our base stands open as late in the season as possible. And I will update the board and the general public to if and when those beaches might have to be closed based on staffing numbers. Also then too, respectfully submitted Jeff Thompson, Amagansett District Chief. Made a visit to the Feathertop Farm. Feathertop Farm is one of our agricultural farms that we have a town has invested into and licensed out to agricultural licensees. The individuals there are doing a wonderful job on that farm then too, with over 12 acres as they amend the soils because they were originally farmland, then put into homes, and now they amended the soils, having some of their CSEs and such. And too, I'd love to have them in the future.
We talked about it at the Ag Advisory Committee. I think what we're going to do is rotate in the farmers that are leasing property from the town to give us an update on what they're working on.
Spectacular. I was very impressed by the amount of work ethic. I don't have to look too far to my right to see, understand what it takes to be an active and successful in that farming industry then too. So even more kudos to you, Ian, down there. But the work that these two individuals have put in down there is very, very difficult but very, very rewarding for them. I want to continue on the aquaculture. The community oyster gardening is successfully working still. And I think we've come up with some potentially new bird deterrent options. I thank the supervisor for bringing down the town's department heads this past week down to our hatchery, which is located at Gann Road. So a lot of the individuals that are in our town department heads can see actually the only location the town board does a lot to protect living things, but this is the only department in which we grow living things. So it's very important, as we all know, that success of the aquaculture facility as far as aquaculture and oysters, clams, hard clams, and scallops also has success in filtering out pollutants in our bodies of water. Playhouse update then too. One of the most critical paths is happening today at the Playhouse, as I noted to the town board, which is over a 250-yard concrete pour on the second floor that will lead to curing. After that, critical pathway is successfully moved ahead. A lot of the other primes will be moving in as far as electricity and plumbing, but it is the most critical day for the Montauk Playhouse in the restoration project, and then also the natatorium that they're building.
We ordered a beautiful weather and low humidity, so that's good news, I would
I
add.
had so much to do with that. So yes, exactly. But you're exactly right. I tried my best, Supervisor. So that worked out really well there then too. I also want to let everyone know that new Montauk trash cans came in today, so we'll be actively placing them.
That's
And they get on the
We're
high.
going to have a press event?
Yes, exactly.
That's very good news, Dave.
There we go. So we'll get those out and get them appropriately placed, and we'll be placing more, ordering them, probably more of them as we see the quality of these ones. With that, I want to let the board know that I will not be in the office tomorrow till through the weekend, as I'll be taking my daughter to college. So we will not be here at the Tuesday meeting. Carol already knows that we'll be putting most of my resolutions onto you, Tom. If that's okay.
Absolutely.
If anyone has any questions on those, please just let me know in advance if you have any questions, and I will give you any rundown on those. But I thank you very much for your patience, as I won't be here.
Okay. Thank you. And we send you our love, David, as you send your oldest off to college.
Send me some napkins.
I won't try to make you cry right now, but I know it's right here. That's a big moment in life. And to all the parents out there that are doing the same this August, it'll go smoothly and they'll be back before you know it. The dune, I guess I'll call it the ditch dune team for rebuilding the dune, met with the coastal science engineers via Zoom. We were to have a site meeting, but Hurricane Debbie stopped that as they were in the Carolinas and experiencing some of the impacts of what we're trying to alleviate. We had a very good discussion on what makes a dune FEMA eligible, and why we're looking for that again is so that if there is damage to the dune in the future, or when there is damage to the dune, we will be eligible for funding from FEMA to be able to rebuild that dune. So that's why that element is important. There were further discussions on what that design looks like. We've asked Coastal Science Engineering to come up with modeling for what the options are, so that we can bring that out to the board and to the community as a whole, so we can discuss together what the options are for FEMA funding, what the requirements are, and then maintaining public access, et cetera, to our beaches. The Litter Action Committee, are sincerely very grateful for the new trash cans, because it does make a difference in our community to have new cans available. It sounds, funny, but it's really a very big element for people to toss it in the right place and not to toss it out your window, and to keep East Hampton beautiful. There will be another town-wide East Hampton cleanup event in late September, that they're developing the programs for right now. It'll be a very concentrated blast of information about all the rules for keeping East Hampton clean, and keeping litter off our roads and garbage off our roads and properties. They're working on that. They'll be bringing that forward to us. And as far as the rest of the good news for ditch planes, I'll leave that to your report. Nope, I'll leave it for you. But we had a very good week for ditch planes in Montauk in general. And I just want to also say to Georgette and to everyone that attending and learning, I'm writing feverishly as you're talking, because, my age, having been through public school, college, and a student of American history, what really stands out to me is that what I learned in my time was a portion of American history. And I hope everyone comes out for these events, because we are only getting a partial picture. And in order to, and as you said, find that we have more likenesses than differences, this is how you do it. And I just want to thank you again for all that you do. And that's it.
Ian?
Yes, thank you. There's a couple of important public hearings coming up on August 15th, on Thursday at 6 p.m. The first is senior density, to increase the senior density allowance from 8 units to 12 per acre. I know there's been a lot of interest I've heard in the community about this, and encourage everybody to show up who would like to see the public hearing or be heard. There's another one, and I don't want to steal Kathy's thunder because she's probably going to mention this, but also Thursday, parkland alienation for 3 Mile Harbor. There's a project in the corner of 3 Mile Harbor and Springs Fireplace. This is proposing language on the ballot for potential parkland alienation to remove a hurdle of a county project that would allow for the potential of traffic calming measures there. There is a Springs Park meeting on Monday, August 19th at 4:30 at Town Hall. I've spoken about this park a number of times as the liaison. It's been a controversial subject for a number of years. We're holding the committee meeting in person so that any member of the public can watch the committee's work. And I believe there will be some at least limited public comment as well, just so everybody's involved in the conversations happening about Springs Park. On Tuesday, there's a Springs CAC meeting, Tuesday, August 20th at 6 p.m. at Ashwag Hall. Everybody's welcome to attend. I don't have the agenda just yet, but it's always a good meeting for anybody interested in what's happening in Springs.
All right, great. Thanks, Ian.
I just left out one thing, Kathy. I think it's important, the zoning code working group. I got so excited about the Amistad Week. I am working with the town attorneys and members of the planning department to write the actual codes for the changes that we presented. We're looking for a very early September, perhaps September 3rd, if there's something on the schedule, to be able to present that to the board and the public. So we are making movement on that. That's not a firm date for us, but it'll be early September, as early as possible.
Okay, great, thank you. So I've been doing all summer, I'd like to share the East Hampton Town Police Department statistics for last weekend. And this is from Friday morning at 6 a.m. to Monday morning at the same time. There were 279 events handled with 18 residential and 3 commercial noise complaints. All 3 commercial noise complaints, they were under the decibel levels. 33 medical aided cases, 14 motor vehicle accidents, 6 arrests, including 2 DWIs and 47 citations issued. There was a report of an unruly group, a large gathering of trucks on Sunday afternoon in the area of Navy Beach, which were gone upon the officer's arrival. This was apparently associated with the presidential campaign boat rally, which passed through our area during the afternoon without any reported incidents. It was another busy weekend of traffic and call volume, and as David mentioned when he gave the lifeguard report, we had a number of distressed swimmer calls. It's because at one point, I think I heard on the police scanner on Friday, it was a red flag day, and I know that the rift current was, very severe. Just wanted to touch base about the Oakview Highway Manufactured Home Park. When the town first learned of the power outages there, we acted expeditiously to investigate and do our part to help resolve the issue, including having an electrical underwriter inspect the electrical service. Now with power restored, we began working with management of the park to address and rectify these issues promptly and effectively. And we heard this morning before we came out here to Montauk that RH Properties that owns the park has been in contact, and PSCG and LIPA have confirmed they will begin work in the community tomorrow. Their drill team will start upgrading the infrastructure, which is a significant step forward. I just want to mention I've got a resolution on for Thursday for Change Hampton. We're going to extend their agreement another 3 years. It's been a tremendous partnership. They've got a new program coming on board now with the Meadows, so that will go through the end of 2027. As Kate mentioned, we had a big day here in Montauk last Friday. The governor came to visit. We had a meeting at the Montauk Downs, where she presented a very big check, both literally and figuratively, for $2.5 million for coastal resiliency, for ditch plains, for the beach restoration and the dune restoration that Kate had mentioned. I do want to say that I've read some of this has already been covered in the press, but there was some misreporting. What we had put in the capital budget was $1.75 million for that project, and now the state has given us another $2.5 million. We then also had a meeting with the governor over at the new 3 Mile Harbor affordable apartments. We had the lottery for that about 10 days ago. There's an outside agency now going through all of the applications in the order of the families were chosen with the randomizing of the applications. They're hoping to get folks in before school starts, so there's a ribbon cutting coming soon. But at the project, the governor presented us with a certificate of recognition, as we are the first municipality on Long Island to be certified a pro-housing community. That gives us access to $650 million in potential funding. We got into the office on Monday. We've already gotten an email about upcoming webinars that the state is holding, and I know Sam has already signed up, and some folks in our housing department, so we can figure out, what projects we're working on align with the monies that are available. So that's really exciting. I also know that the governor, before she came out to Montauk on Friday morning, stopped at the retreat and made a significant contribution to the retreat. I don't have all the details. I'm under the impression they will be sending out a press release, but they also received a big check in the amount of $575,000. So the governor is very supportive of and understands, domestic violence and domestic abuse. I've also heard her speak at a Phoenix House event about adolescent and just general mental health. She's a huge advocate of that, and for poverty. So I look forward to finding other opportunities and for the board to work together with the governor and the governor's office on initiatives that will help the folks here in our community. Speaking of helping folks in our community, I wanted to come back and see if we could have a follow-up discussion. Last Tuesday, we had a presentation from R2 Architects about the new senior center, and I know some questions were raised, and I was hoping that we could maybe use this opportunity to have a discussion or the beginning of a discussion, because I'm sure it's not all going to be settled today, but I wanted to just address, I know, Tom, you had brought up and you were advocating for a basement at the new senior center. So I had asked the folks from R2 Architects to go back and just give us a ballpark of what that would be. So a rough estimate for a 22,000 square foot basement is between $250 and $410 per square foot. So that would translate to $5.5 million to $9 million to include a basement in that building, but there are many factors that affect the price. We're assuming that there's no need for piles, just footings, that there's no need to dewater the site. If it is an unfinished basement, we had to assume 2 means of egress and an elevator, sprinklers, lights, and electric outlets. If we're storing important items, does that space need conditioning or at least dehumidifying? Are the walls finished? And it should also be noted that adding a basement would also require additional consultant fees on top of the construction costs, and which led us, I know you and I had a conversation after the fact last week, about, municipal storage, and some of the questions that would arise if we were to use the senior center or the basement of the new senior center as a site for municipal storage. Then we have to, how does that get delivered to the site? Do we need a truck dock? What size are the trucks? Because we've already, designed the site plan and the layout to accommodate the types of trucks that now come for, delivery of our food items. So if it's bigger than we've already allowed for, we could lose parking spots. Would have to adjust turning radii. We would probably need additional retaining walls. So if that were the case, there's a lot of questions that would need to get answered. The other thing, it's my understanding, and maybe Kate,
Yeah, I was just going to say, in terms of our preparing for coastal resiliency and resiliency, storing important items or even having basements in buildings that traditionally flood. If we look back at what happened to the infrastructure and how much that impacted people not being able to use elevators because there weren't mechanicals down there and storage in there, and even people living in basements in today's world, that it's not really consistent with our goals for increasing our resiliency in the town. We'd rather see storage above ground than going down into the ground. There's also issues with displacing those soils. We now know dirt is not just dirt, it's ecosystems. So there's much more displacement of soils, and there's also issues with drainage. And so a whole new drainage plan and where that would go for that would be an additional cost as well. We also know that lessons from Sandy, that not only did we see flooding from the coast and from our surface waters, because of the flooding from the surface waters deep inland, it also pushed up the groundwater, which in many cases on Long Island, where I grew up west, that came into basements and ruined mechanicals or anything that was stored down there. So with these factors, I think a basement, instead of the design that's been proposed, would be difficult to justify.
Right. And
I think one thing you and I discussed when we met following that meeting yesterday was and thank you for getting back with the cost estimate, I appreciate that. What is the comparable cost for the same storage on a different piece of town land? So we talked about some of the properties the town owns. Right. And so, we want to make the right economic decision as well. So, how do we balance that out?
Right. And part of that is we do own industrial commercial property on, say, perhaps at the airport, right? And if we needed to more centralize our municipal storage, that might be something to pursue. But I also think that there are times when you want those trailers to be on the site of that space so that you're not having to use staff time, depending on the emergency, move things from, say, Wainscott to Town Hall. So, I think, but we can certainly look into our municipal storage needs, the police department's storage needs, and maybe there's a project that we could do, I think, probably a lot more cost effectively than and again, to Kate's point, it's best to have the storage on the main floor as opposed to in the basement. You had also brought up the possibility of making the new senior center an emergency shelter.
Yeah.
Well, we learned that mechanicals cannot be in the basement in emergency shelters as basements flood. So they have to be on the main level. So, and I did get into looking into what it would take to become an emergency shelter. And I wound up with a 180-page document. And even if you just look at what is required, I'm not even sure first of all, the East Hampton High School is the designated shelter for.
One of four.
Yeah, for East Hampton, right? And part of what's required in a shelter is to be able to have separate spaces for the different, community members are there. Like you can't put families in, they have to be in their own separate. Children and family go in one area. There has to be a childcare area. There's, a lounge and recreation area. So it's really, if you're using a dormitory area, and when you become an emergency shelter, then the town would not be able to use that building. So when you look at what happened during COVID, for instance, we kept the current senior center operating. Our staff was going in there every day. And from March of 2020 to the middle of July in 2021, we prepared and gave out to seniors over 91,000 meals. Like if that became a secondary shelter, our staff wouldn't be able to go in there and we wouldn't have that capability. So from my perspective, while it's good to be looking into the possibility of what it would take to make the new senior center a shelter, I think we're on a better track keeping it a warming and cooling center where we have the ability to bring staff in if power goes out, where staff can operate there, where we can bring staff in to make meals for the seniors in our community, as opposed to trying to make it a emergency shelter. I mean, we can certainly look into it more, but I think that may be more than we can.
I would like to continue to explore it. I mean, just looking through the town's emergency plan, be it for the hurricane specific or elsewhere, I mean, we have the potential, depending on an event, to have up to 3,000 displaced people. And we have the ability with the current shelters that we have listed in that plan of the high school, Montauk Playhouse, the American Legion, and the existing Human Services Center is a recognized shelter as well.
Warming and cooling, we don't have a contract.
Right, but it's in the emergency plan, right? The current emergency plan. So that's 800 people. Like, we might need that space to be flexible. And I think that's the piece. It's like, is it a designated center or will it have the flexibility to adopt and potentially shelter those people? Because I think the other thing about this is that in that kind of event, we have to have that flexibility. I mean, it's simply, we need, because a variety of factors. You can go into the threats to the kind of the road infrastructure, the fact we are shelter in place, the storm surge zones. If we have an area that is significantly impacted and we have that number of displaced people and we're not able to transport them out given the event, what is the housing plan? What is the shelter plan for them? And I think that's something that we just need to have in the back of our mind as we look at that project.
So Tom, when you mentioned this, I wanted to take a good hard look at this, and I reached out to a contact in Nassau County, OEM, is that what it is?
Office of Emergency Management, yeah.
And someone who was there also in Sandy and worked in the shelters and took on the lessons learned from Sandy. And there's a big difference between, apparently, and I'm just repeating, between a Red Cross designated shelter and a heating and cooling, or for example, in terms of what could the building be used for if it was the type of emergency that was long-term and first responders had to come in from different areas. If it's not a Red Cross shelter, that's someplace that they can be housed, but the kitchen can still operate. It doesn't have the structure of a Red Cross shelter, which is, you have to have separate dormitories from the food areas. You have to have that's why the high schools are so attractive, or colleges, because there's so many different rooms for services that are required in a Red Cross designated shelter. I also understand that putting two of them close together is not optimum, that they usually spread them apart. And I think there was information the last time the high school was opened as a shelter. The next shelter was actually, Red Cross designated shelter was in the Bays. Hampton Bays, because Nassau County, for example, designated Red Cross shelter for the county has about 5.
Of course, they're much bigger, particularly with Nassau Community College. So I think looking at shelters more globally and larger structures that can accommodate this, and then perhaps looking at because it's my understanding they would like to open, like their deployment is something like opening Nassau Community College, which is a designated Red Cross shelter, because obviously it has a very large capacity and many, many rooms, and a separate cafeteria building even than from where you can put dormitories. And I think we should take a look at what type of shelters we need, whether it be designated Red Cross shelters or whether, as for COVID during that pandemic, how well we were able to put out meals for people that may have food insecurity during these times, and then work with the Red Cross to take a look at what is our plan for sheltering people, and what do you do when you're just this geographically isolated. I also would like to support whatever's happening at the Montauk Playhouse. I don't know if that's ever been opened actually by the Red Cross, but to
I believe it's designated. It was my understanding from Jason Rawcliffe, who's the logistics manager for them. It has been designated in the past as a Red Cross shelter. The challenge you have right now is with the new HVAC system, and I've asked our capital planning engineers to explore this, the existing generator wouldn't necessarily support the existing HVAC system.
So that's something I think.
So it's we've potentially lost that as a shelter. And Montauk is a unique situation because it's completely isolated. So how we go to address that. I've talked with Sam as well about generators.
Yeah, super important and should be a priority. And also the Red Cross, reaching out to the Red Cross, they need to be as staffing efficient as possible. Because of course, staff for everybody, is always something that they want to make sure they're putting people in a place where they can maximize the impact that staff has, and rather than spread them out into different areas. But as I said, where I feel like at this point with the development of the senior center, the items you're talking about are quite necessary, but I'm not sure, and I don't feel like shoehorning them in to an existing construction project that's been developed over time, and I don't see as having the space needed for housing these many people or to take care of the maximum amount of people is really the right way to go. Or look at them, the storage issue and the sheltering issue more globally and how we can build those in the best places or facilitate designated Red Cross shelters, because the idea that Montauk, which I don't think was ever opened by the Red Cross, because they only opened that primary shelter according to the Red Cross, that try to do a primary shelter, and then there's flooding, they open up additional shelters. So if we look at risk, I think Montauk would be at a risk of being cut off in terms of flooding, and that would be very important to make sure that shelter stays in the designation and whatever we need to do there for that one. And then just take a look at, I think it's a more regional approach, and to look at it regionally with like Sag Harbor, what's Pearson, it's a big school, again, with a lot of facilities and a lot of broken up rooms.
But again, if you look at the slush maps, we could be isolated from Sag Harbor. That 114.
But not everyone in East Hampton. If we could divert some people here and divert people here, I don't think we're going to be able to shelter everyone in place in any particular area, because so many factors are involved with, are we flooding from the north? Are the bay is flooding? Is Montauk completely cut off? Is the damage happening more up west? I mean, even within the Sandy times, the people that managed that, what happened in Massapequa south of the highway, was different even from Amityville. So it had to be very specific.
Hence the flexibility of buildings.
Yeah, and I agree with that, but I just think that this would be better shelter used where the kitchen stays open and perhaps first responders can be sheltered for all the areas that they come from, because they also would need housing, according to OEM. That's another consideration. And that a Red Cross designated shelter, a Red Cross shelter designation doesn't allow you to do that.
Right, and I think we need to get absolute clarification. I've been trying for a while from the emergency coordinator as to, what the situation is with our existing shelters, and to ensure that they do meet Red Cross designations. But we've got that discussion to follow up, I know. Look, humbly, I disagree. I mean, I really do think that from the space piece, the storage piece, I kind of understand. I still have my reservations on it, bluntly. But from an emergency shelter perspective, I think it would be a misstep not to have this space have that capability.
Well, it gets to have that capability if we keep the mechanicals on the main floor and we don't put them in the basement, so we don't build a basement. It also, there was a second point that I wanted to make as far as how it keeps that capability. Oh, and yeah, how we've rethought the generator, and now we're going to have National Grid. We're going to have that so that we actually need 2 generators to run a 22,000 square foot building, so that we can go 24/7. So I think those are, 2 important things in order to have a capability of this building being used in emergency, which was always the plan. Like, we always thought of this as a warming and cooling center. But to Kate's point, if there was a situation and, folks had to come, people had to come in from, PSE&G needed to bring folks in from all over the country, yes, they could set up shop out of the.
Yeah, I mean, I think that speaks to the emergency preparedness plan as a whole, and that's something that I've discussed with the emergency management team as to, when we're looking at those kind of resources and what the capabilities are. We've talked about, do we build partnerships with private entities, be it hotels or others who could do that housing? I understand we'd have to have contracts in place to do that and have the funding set aside should that need be there. But what is the best use of that building? It's a fair question.
Yeah, and I guess we talked about this, about correcting it. I think one of the comments you had made was that basements, typically they're economical. We've heard that from residential builders.
For residences.
But you've also talked about it being environmentally better, friendly, whatever. But from what we've learned for commercial buildings, that's not the case, because you're not digging out say, even on a bigger home, a 4,000 square foot basement, you're potentially digging out for a 22,000 square foot basement. You're moving, as Kate said earlier, a lot of soil where there's ecosystems, and we've seen in Montauk where in some cases basements were dug out, and it really affected the drainage in that neighborhood. So I think we have to be really cognizant of that. And then the other point that I wanted to make, I know we talked about the floor plan. So we had adopted the current floor plan by resolution, actually, back in January 2023. And I know you had raised a concern about conference rooms, and you wanted the building to be flexible. And that we had always, from the get-go, wanted that building to be flexible, which is why the wellness wing has different size rooms for different types of activities. And then on the staff wing, we, a conference room, a break room down the road, if we needed it for staff, could be reconfigured. But, the town needs more conference rooms. In fact, right now, we are in the process of converting the old condominium unit that code enforcement was in to a conference room to accommodate the folks at 300 Panago. And there's times now, yes, we're doing more teleconferences, but a lot of our departments like to take those teleconferences together, not each one of them at their individual desks on a Zoom. A lot of times when you conference with our planning department or you conference with our natural resources department, staff is sitting together and they're doing the conference. So there is a need for a conference room. And then as far as a break room is concerned, I do believe that, this is where staff will come in. That's where they'll clock in, they'll have lockers, and they'll be able to, take their break, have their lunch at a table, as opposed to what Diane had said last week, that many staff are eating in their car on their laps. And I just think that if we're building a new building, that we could, find, I think it's 450 square feet in order to give our staff the dignity to be able to have a space to go to when they're on break, whether it's to have a cup of coffee or it's to answer some personal texts or it is, to eat their turkey sandwich. But that's my personal view. And it's something that, we have been vetting publicly for the last couple of years. And I think that we need to move forward with the senior center, with the plans, as drafted, with the changes that we discussed last Tuesday. And that's, forgoing the stainless steel, going with the fibrous cement board, going with the standing seam roof, lowering the ceiling in the dining room and lobby, having a generator that can go 24/7, going to one walking path at this point. I mean, I think that those are great changes that we've made, and those are in response to community comment. But I think we're ready to move forward with the plan. And we need to finish the secra. We need to have the planning department, they're working on that now, come to a town board work session, present the secra, and then we get to make a determination on that. And we get to, continue to get this project designed and out to bids because our seniors deserve it, quite frankly.
Well, if I could jump in, I had some questions and comments as well on Tuesday, and I think these topics we're talking about are important topics for sure. I know Tom's put a ton of thought into shelters and emergency preparedness. This is important whether we're talking about it at the senior center or elsewhere, and I look forward to those discussions continuing. I don't want to, look, I think Tom and I are both new to the board, and we don't have the benefit of having been in the room and making decisions throughout this, and I respect that a lot of work has gone into it. But naturally, as two people who are interested in serving the town well, we want to share our comments. I don't want to go into the details of whether, a basement and the environmental friendliness or the of a basement, I think depends on the site. And the flooding risk depends on the site. I don't know the realities in this case, and I don't want to sort of rehash it here. Look, I wholeheartedly respect the work that Kathy and everybody else has done, and I'm not an obstructionist. I think that things have to proceed. It can't be every time there's a new board member, we start from scratch. And so from the start of this, I've tried to strike that balance and recognizing the work that's gone in, the decisions that have been made. And that might just be the case here. So, by no means are any of my comments saying I understand everything and you guys are wrong. It's just I want to share my genuine thoughts. And so that's where I am. It was not a critique, and I understand that decisions have been made, and it's now time to move forward, and that's fine, and appreciate it. I just I think you can do both, respect the work that's been done, and also share some comments.
Yeah.
So I'll unpack this, I guess. I'm very comfortable where the senior center is moving forward, but Tom's brought up a lot of good information here. Mm-hmm. So I think one of the things that's missing, and I would put it back to you, Tom, to move forward, is I think we have a much larger building than this building that's probably more adaptable, and that I would like to see that. I would rather see funding potentially put into that, which is the indoor athletic facility right next door. You can actually potentially make that an island with solar on top, battery power, get the generator. If we invest in the bathrooms might be needed, that might be an open Butler building style facility that has the exact flexibility with large parking on there, natural gas onto the street. And again, this just sort of came into this discussion to me right now on it. So it would be within the same complex because of us joining those three properties within the same complex of the town entities, be able to accomplish two of the great things that are coming out of this discussion. Benefit for the Center for Modern Aging.
Thank you.
You're welcome. but also for warm and cooling and community needs for disaster relief or such on there, which I'm not here to be the expert, but I'm always here to learn. So I think that might be a facility that we can look into. And with the money savings on potentially putting in a subterranean aspect of it, I would almost rather see it go into potentially that we can more look into that or settle on storage, because knowing that the police department was budgeting about $2 million for vehicles alone on there, but designing into a Butler building that might be more needed for what we already have on site, because they're looking to store millions of dollars of equipment One of the things I did come up with, and I didn't know about the Playhouse on there, we talked with James also, there are grants out to current emergency shelters right now for generators.
They're for hydrogen or alternative fuel. I know. Yeah, no,
I mean, but they're there, and we can have Sam continue to look into it.
She's doing a great job with that.
And we continue to do that. Overall, Ian's correct. I've been on. Well, I mean, I think it was week 2 I saw initial plan, not for this site, but other sites. I know the need. My mom tells me at 80 right now, the need and what she used to do in that building back when it was a club. It's not right what we're doing. It's not, I'm really prepared to move forward on it. I appreciate all the discussion into it right now, but I think there's ways that we take all the good out of all this discussion into potentially separate but needed things. I'm ready to move forward on that, on both of these, Tom.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I appreciate getting that number back, Kathy, because I think, part of this is an economic discussion as well. And if we're talking like a $10 million project to do a basement versus we can find storage on existing land and do it for 5, then that's the right decision for the taxpayer as well. So I think it's been a good discussion, a good exploration, and I think those questions have been out there in the public. If people still continue to have questions about a basement, you're welcome to comment. But this is where we, I think, are landing as a board following that discussion.
Great. All right. I think we can move on to resolutions. David, I think you're first up.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to offer Resolution 2024-1035. This is the appoint full-time automotive equipment operator in the Highway Department, Angel Ferez. And this would be an hourly rate of $26.37 an hour, retroactive to July 29, 2024.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 1036 is the appoint seasonal lifeguards for August 2024. This will go through September 16th, 2024. Names, positions, pay grades, and dates started below.
Second. All in favor?
Aye. 1037 is a title change for lifeguards for August 2024. Again, looking below for all-time buddy of mine. Names, positions, pay scales, and retroactive dates before. Congratulations to reserting, Paul.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I have Resolution 1038, which is a reimbursement to the Assistant Planning Director. This is in accordance with Planning Director Lagaren. Professional certification, Tina must hold an APA professional membership, AICP membership, and be registered with the New York Metro chapter. Resolved that Tina Lagaren shall be reimbursed for dues paid from the budget line, the appropriate budget line, in the amount of $618.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I have Resolution 2024-1039, and that's to increase the cap for the law office of Vincent Toomey in PBA matters, and this constitutes a total of $100,000. Second. All in favor?
Aye. I have Resolution, do we have a number on this one? No. Resolution ID 3152. We have a number?
1040.
This is Resolution 1040. Let me just correct that, Carol, on my thing. And this is the approval of special events for August 2024. Be resolved that the following special events permits are hereby approved with the conditions agreed upon by the reviewing committee. First is Surf Lodge, the wellness and musical celebration for the East Hampton High School Jazz Band. That's at the Surf Lodge, 183 Edgemer Street in Montauk. It's retroactive to and including Saturday, 8/10/2024. Setup was on 8/9 and takedown will be on 8/13, and that went from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Next, we have Sirius XM Radio Inc., the Sirius XM concert, Stephen Hans Talkhouse, 161 Main Street, Amagansett, Saturday, 8/17/24 from 5 to 9 p.m. Setup is 8:15, takedown is 8:18. Amber Waves Farm, Hoedown Fundraiser. This is the next one for Amber Waves Farm, 367 North Main Street, Amagansett, Friday, 8/16/24, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. The rain date is 8/17/2024, 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. Setup is on 8/15, takedown is on 8/17. And lastly, we have the Novogratz Labor Day weekend celebration. This takes place at a private residence in Amagansett, and that's Saturday, 8/31 from 2 p.m. to 8 p.m.
I'm going to recuse myself on this. Can I still
Sure.
second?
So I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Or should we do a roll call?
Councilmember Flight,
Aye.
Councilmember Lees,
Aye.
Councilmember Rogers,
Aye.
Councilmember Calder Piedmont,
Recused?
Supervisor Burke Gonzalez.
Aye. I have Resolution 1041, and that's to appoint police officers to the Academy. Brian Oriomuno and Stephanie Acevedo be and are hereby appointed to the position of police officer Spanish speaking in the Police Academy, and Micah Jones, Ian Cook, and Austin Ganga be and are hereby appointed to the position of police officer in the Police Academy, all at the annual salary of $63,989.11, effective August 19th. And Ian Gherkin is hereby appointed to police officer at the same annual salary with the same effective date.
Second.
Discussion?
Sure.
I want to let everyone know that Stephanie Acevedo has been a dedicated, wonderful, valued member of my wife's, my family business for a couple years now then too. I know she'll do the exact same for the town of East Hampton and for the police department. She will be missed on a daily basis, but I want to let everyone know that and just distinguish that as she moves on to the East Hampton Town Police Department then also.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's what we have for today. So do I have a resolution to go into exec session?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session for CPF, litigation, personnel, advice of counsel, and public safety.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.